Thank you for joining us at the 43rd Asian American International Film Festival. I'd like to thank our community partners, Chinatown Partnership and ADOC. ADOC is a national network that works to increase the visibility and support of Asian Americans in the documentary field. If you have questions for our directors, please put them in chat. Also, don't forget that we have our live award ceremony tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So today we have Stéphane, who is the director of Jasmine Lane, Daniel, director of Providence, and Simeon, director of The Untitled Portrait of Red. So there's questions for all of you. This shorts block is called Lost and Found. There's a general feeling in each of these shorts that the main character feels lost in some way and then finds themselves throughout the film. Could you talk about how you decided that you wanted to create these films? Stéphane, if you'd like to go first, that'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. Well, the film is inspired by my own family story. My parents arrived in France in the early 60s, and they arrived in a very small village in the center of France. And I was always interested in this story because cultural shock must have been very strong. Like they used to live in a big city in Saigon at the time, and they arrived in this little village and they didn't know what the winter was, how to speak the language or how to eat proper food. And I thought that would be an interesting story, and I wanted to deal with issues of, exile and, feeling lost in a country where you have to start a new life. So yeah, I decided to base my story on that, and then I created some fictional elements to it.
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean,
what brought you to want to make this film?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to there's been a lot of, I guess, tragic events in my family history for the past couple of years, and I think I wanted to pinpoint what exactly was the reason of these events. And I guess I started just looking into the archives and looking into my family's history, and there wasn't one event or one person that was responsible for everything. But I guess I started looking into history and how my father's ambitions kind of resulted in this sort of suffering of my family, but also about how his environment made him the person he was. And I was really kind of inspired by this commentary that the director Bora Kim, she's the director of House of Hummingbird, a Korean film, and she was commenting about 80s and 90s Korea, South Korea, and how kind of there was this obsession with becoming a first world country and becoming a country like the United States, that there was a lot of things that was kind of lost amongst this race. And I think that's what that kind of idea of the 90s was exactly what I found my family's history starting to I guess crumble. And so yeah, I guess I tried to look there, and specifically into the 1997 financial crisis, in pinpointing my family's history. So yeah, this is a documentary about that.
Simeon?
Yeah, so I wanted to make a film about, so I went to high school in Ojai, and I thought it was an interesting experience because it's I didn't expect in that place there are a lot of international students. So I wanted to make a movie about their experiences and my experience. So my movie is almost like a combination. It's how they have to deal with their family, their culture, while they are exposed to a lot of the new things while they're studying abroad. And I wanted to do it with a sense of surrealism arts and combine it into what I think is like a documentation of these experiences for these international students that study abroad in the U.S.
So this question is for you, Simeon. There's this incredible fear of the future as an emotional driver of the main characters in your film. The fear of the future for not only Bruce and his girlfriend, but also his dad. What made you choose that as a main theme of the film?
Yeah, because I think it's what like a lot of my friends and I have to like experience. Like I mean, like in high school, you have to decide where you want to go to college or like choose your major and things like that. And I think especially like in Asian families, there are a lot of like expectations or like they think they're guiding you, but oftentimes that will cause like conflicts and confusions. So I thought that was very common and relatable, and I wanted to make something that's a little more expressive with the storytelling and like the visual elements with surrealism. So I thought like having a very basic, like grounded conflict was important, and I thought it was an authentic reflection of what I saw there when I went to school in Ojai.
Daniel, this one is for you. So your film travels through about 30 years of time, and the one thing I kept thinking throughout was like, wow, capitalism is messing us all up all of the time. We don't even know it. We never think about it. There are these tiny moments of reprieve in the film, and then you bring us back with something sudden like the father asks for the wife's name to start a business. And this is like so grounding while also bringing me back into the film and my own experiences. This is like something I think many of us can relate to in terms of trying to deal with past financial mistakes. Could you talk to us about making this film and looking back at your family's history and then perhaps realizing, you know, this wasn't our fault. This wasn't about us. This was society as a whole failing us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like as a kid, my dad would tell me that that the reason his business didn't work out was because of this 1997 financial crisis, but he wouldn't really go in depth about the historical event. And I just always had this idea that like he never went in depth of like what exactly was the cause of all of these problems. Like was it his ambition? Like I mean, I almost like kind of blamed him in a sense, but then the more that I thought about it, it was so much more complicated than that. And I think once you look into this kind of hegemonic kind of influence of capitalism and global capitalism, like once I started understanding this framework as time passed, I started to understand that it wasn't just him, but it was like this whole network of ideas and and um and and influences that caused him to think in a certain way. And I think that's where I got the line. Like there was like promises that were made to him, and that these are the promises that he teaches like his children as well. And you know, yeah, I guess it's the whole. It was trying to understand this framework and looking beyond just the person, but the network and like society behind him. And I guess that was a challenging part because the logic is in my head, but it's just hard to like really put in words and put into a sequence that makes sense to people and explain. Yeah, and that, I guess that was the most challenging part of that. Mhm.
Stéphane, in the cafe scene in the middle of the film, there's a striking difference between what the table of men are saying versus what the table of women are experiencing upon viewing the footage of the end of American occupation of Vietnam. I noticed that the men are more concerned with the groups who have run and are about to run the country, and also their desire for Vietnam to become unified. The women seem more concerned with the individuals and the people of Vietnam and the safety of their families. I was wondering what brought you to this kind of gendered response to the end of American occupation. I mean, at the same time that they're having two different responses, I'm aware that they're not sitting together. They're the space and the spatial look of that shot makes them feel very separate.
Yeah, well, I was inspired by, my parents and my parents' friends, this generation when they had, parties. Most of the time, women were together and men were together. So it was a, a different era. And I remembered, like, most of the times, men were talking about politics, and they were drinking, and they were, talking louder, and women were more concerned about their relatives that were still in Vietnam. And so yeah, I wanted to show this difference of the women who were more concerned with human and personal matters, and men who were a bit bragging and talking about politics, but maybe not as concerned with personal and family problems. Yeah.
That really came off very well in the film. So this question is for all of you. Another common thread in all of your movies was a deep-seated longing. In Jasmine Lane, it's wanting to go back home to Vietnam. In Untitled Portrait of Red, it's for the freedom to make one's own decisions about one's life. And in Providence, it seems to be a longing for a better life. Could you each talk about this drive and how you chose to go about capturing it? Whether that capturing was through images or interactions between characters? Daniel, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I guess like capturing this idea of longing, it wasn't very like coordinated. It happened very organically because I had the footage beforehand, and I was trying to make something, make like a video essay kind of with the footage that I already had. Like I didn't like shoot anything knowing that I would want to make something like what I did, like Providence. So yeah, it was just figuring out how to tell this story of my family in the right order. Like I said earlier, like in the logic that made sense to me, and I needed to edit it in a way that would make sense to others as well. And yeah, so I guess I was listening to music a lot and spoken word poetry, as well as this documentary Tarnation by Jonathan Coet, and he uses his VHS or like home footage in like extraordinary ways and delving into like in trauma. And I wanted to achieve like a similar effect with this mixture of home footage, of iPhone footage as well, and also just like space footage, like that I have of a rocket like launching. I wanted to use that as a metaphor as well. So I guess it was just like making this cocktail that made sense visually. Yeah.
Simeon, if you'd like to talk about the theme of longing.
Yeah, I mean that I think that's just the. I think that the protagonist is it's inherently like he wants to figure it out, but at the same time, the whole movie he's just kind of like hesitating, like doesn't know what quite to do. Even in the end, I think he has a better idea, but you're not quite sure if he's really, be able to be free. and I think like throughout the process, it's like I think the location was very important because the landscapes are really beautiful. Everything's like very open up, but kind of the just juxtaposition is that like all these struggles are very internal. That like which is true. I think like a lot of my peers that were there. I mean, like it's a very beautiful place to go to school to, but a lot of the struggles are, you know, comes from a family, and the families like across the Pacific Ocean. They're not even there, but the presence is there. So that's what I wanted to capture. Like I think even though you are in a very free place, but that type of pressure, that type of anxiety still could be very strongly have a strong presence in your life when you're in that kind of family. So of course, it's almost like the freedom's so close, but it's very difficult to step out of it. You know, kind of go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, in the end, I wasn't sure that he made a decision about freedom. Like the decision was to not make a decision and just sort of exit out.
Yeah, yeah, because I think for him, the issue is that like he has to decide for himself. He can't follow his dad or whatever his girlfriend tells him. So like he has to leave both of them. He has to like decide for himself, which I think that was kind of my intention. Like he has to just figure it out by himself, not listening to like either of them. Yeah.
Stéphane, if you could talk about the theme of longing in Jasmine Lane.
Yeah, I think longing is a very important part of Vietnamese culture for some reason. Like there are millions of songs talking about like your country, missing your village or things like that. And I have always felt that it was really strong in our culture. So I wanted to translate it in different ways because this kind of character and lots of times in our cultures we don't really express things very directly, so she would express her longing in different ways, like I miss a bowl of soup, or I miss walking in the street, or then she would go to the temple, and little by little she has to get used to her life in France. So little by little longing is part of her daily life, and I wanted to translate her longing into very little things and daily scenes of her life, and not having something very dramatic because it's part of her routine. So that's what I tried to do.
Simeon, this next one is for you. In its moments of whimsy, but also a desire for connection, Untitled Portrait of Red feels very much in line with the French New Wave. And of course, there's also that connection to Magritte, which makes the whole film surrealistic. Could you talk about some of your influences in film and why you wanted to show those in your movie?
Yeah, because I think these elements are something like I'm interested, especially I was very interested during that time. So I wanted to explore them with this story. I wanted to tell a romantic story, but at the same time, yeah, like explore how I could put these surrealist images into the story, because I think a very important element I want to capture was the magic feeling in the landscape in Ojai. So I thought a great way to emphasize that was to put surrealism in it, and also in terms of the like theme-wise, I think Rene Magritte's paintings often deal with like objects and subjects that are like not related with the environment, and then he put it in the painting. they exist in the same canvas, and that kind of creates a sense of mystery, a sense of wonder, and also like a sense of like humor in a way. So I think that kind of relates to the story that these characters, they don't belong to this place. They all come from a different country, a different culture, but they only exist here together because like they're going to school there. And I think that there's a sense of that similarity with Magritte's painting. So that's why I make these decisions to put them together. And I think in terms of French New Waves, it was just a decision I made when I felt like, yeah, a lot of these films, they tackle like stories about love, and then like they do it in a way that's very intimate, and I thought that was appropriate for this film. And also especially like I think Magritte's painting, they deal with a lot of they have like French language in the painting too, so I thought that would be interesting to combine these elements together in this short.
Stéphane, this one is for you. Could you talk about food as a cultural linchpin and also a remedy for homesickness? You mentioned this before about the pho. Luan refuses the baguette and talks about how much she would love to have some pho. And later on in the film, towards the end, she's teaching her granddaughter Vietnamese, and she translates the words for bowl and fork. And it really just brought forward for all of us, pretty much. Food brings us together. Food reminds us of home. Food is the one thing, if we're lucky, we can carry with us. Her husband brings home some noodles, which could not be easy to find in their very small village in France, but a bit easier when he goes to work in Paris. And that brings in a little bit of home. Also, the center of the Vietnamese community in their village is a cafe, which Luan works at. So if you could go on about food and those themes.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think as Asians, we know that food is very important to us in every aspect of our lives. And yeah, I mean, it's I think I remember my parents telling me how it was difficult for them to cook Vietnamese dishes when they arrived, and I know that they traveled from Vietnam to France with bottles of fish sauce, and they were very sad when they finished them, and it was very difficult at the time. And we have Vietnamese people and other Asian people, I guess, have a very strong relationship to food, and it says a lot. So as you said, homesickness, but also it's a way of saying that we love each other sometimes, or it makes us, it brings memories and many things like that. So yes, it's a way of, we used to say that Vietnamese people or some other Asian cultures don't express their feelings so very, friendly, but a lot of communication goes through food. And that's what I wanted to say in this film and in some other projects that I'm working on, like the power of food. And it's such an important part of our culture, so in every aspect of it. So yeah, that's what I tried to do.
So this next question is for all of you. Something I noticed about each of your films was that you used muted colors or a muted film stock. Could you talk about that decision and whether it changed the focus of your storytelling? Would it have been different if you were using brighter hues? Daniel, if you would go first.
Yeah, I guess most of the footage that I use is either iPhone footage or archival footage from like the 90s, and home footage as well. And I just found that they basically don't have like popping colors, and I think it suits like the subject matter as well. It's like nothing is I mean, yeah, I guess it was a natural process in which I figured out that in this case, like my documentary wasn't about like having popping aesthetics. It was more about kind of tainted or being disillusioned of fantasies of capitalism or what you can achieve. And I think the color really matched that organically. And I guess it wasn't like a conscious decision, but it happened as I was putting this footage together, and I figured out the texture of the footage and the content. Mm-hmm.
Sort of a dampening of your dreams, a dampening of the colors and your feelings at the same time.
In a way, it happened organically, yeah.
Stéphane, if you'd like to talk about your colors.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wanted to start with some very low-key colors to express what the environment of this little village was like, mostly brown and gray and like sort of sad colors. And I wanted them to evolve a little bit as the movie goes along. To brighter colors, like we have a bit more colors in the cafe, and it's also the 70s, and we have more colors in the temple, and then when we see her house at the end, it's more like green, like the green of her home in a way. So as she adjusts to her new life, she has more colors in her life. But yes, I wanted to have a little evolution of the colors, but start with something quite sad and dark in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the lighting too, I noticed that while we're in the 60s, everything is still very internal or inside of houses, inside of buildings, happening at night when they're actually outside. Everything feels very closed in. And then as we travel, we go to the cafe, and although we're inside, it's opened up a bit more. We're seeing more of the community. We're seeing more human interaction with a larger number of people. And we're outside towards the end, and it's very sunny, and it feels very breezy and comfortable. And there's still a sense of community, although there are less people than there were in the cafe scene. But it's almost like running a lighting shift where we're moving from this dark enclosed area into a very well lit, a very bright, hopeful future.
Yeah, as her own life opens up, she also opens up herself, and her environment opens up. So she, in the beginning, she doesn't really want to. I don't know what's going on. In the beginning, she doesn't really want to go out of her own house, and little by little, yeah, we see different spaces, and yeah, I wanted to show that little by little.
Simeon, if you could talk about your colors, your use of film versus digital.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think that the film is pretty like I wanted to make it like kind of colorful. Except like when he's like with his father, it's a little more like monotone, I think. But yeah, the choice with like film stock was, I think, both like technically, because we were shooting like in Ojai, they have like the sun is really bright, so we thought like film stock captures that like light quality a little better. Like even like some parts were a little overexposed, they have like more of a glowing feeling instead of just like a blank white. So that's in terms of technical, but in terms of like feeling, I think the movie deals with like memories, and I did want to create a sense of nostalgia, so I thought 16mm was a good choice. It captures great images while it still has a very strong silhouette film feeling. And all the colorful elements is really, I think, also again trying to recreate these paintings of Rene Magritte, and also kind of echoing with French New Wave films, because they are also like they use a lot of like bright colors, like primary colors. So that's what we were aiming for aesthetically.
So Simeon, this next question is for you also. I was struck by the omnipresence of Bruce's dad. And this returns to what you were saying before about the story sort of occurs on multiple planes of being. But he feels like this oppressive force that appears in every single one of those planes. He's touching all of the lives that are happening in the film. Could you talk about your decision to add him to places like the beach scenes where theoretically he shouldn't be because he's someplace else, rather than using something standard like a flashback?
Yeah, yeah. So these decisions are like, because to me the story is a lot of it is his memory, a lot of it is like his imagination. So I just wanted to like convey these feelings in a surprising and also like memorable way. So it's almost like, yeah, it's kind of surprising to see him there, but it makes sense emotionally. It makes sense that like he would do something like that, although it's a little more exaggerated. But to him, like as to the protagonist, I think emotionally he's doing that, even though it's maybe physically he doesn't do that as intensively. But I think, yeah, it's a movie, so it's a little bit exaggerated, but I think the emotions are true. And also, I think in terms of most of the scenes in the film are very subtle, so I wanted to have something more impactful, something that will really emphasize or escalate the conflict. So that's why, like, the father, these scenes with father are almost very just like they kind of stuck out. They kind of like just goes a little crazier than expected than the rest of the film. So that was my decision on the story. Yeah.
It really gave the feel of that constant parental pressure. Like they're always somewhere in the back of your mind, whether or not they're in front of you, and sort of informing decisions whether or not you want them to.
Yeah.
So this one is for you, Daniel. Could you talk about a bit about how your film has been received by others, and also by your own family? Like these are really sensitive and vulnerable topics to be discussing. I know, like, if I had filmed something like this, my mom would still be screaming at me, you know, a million years later after I had done whatever. How has it been showing this? How has the family reception has been? How has the general audience been?
Just starting with the general audience, I mean, the people that I've shown this have been, yeah, incredibly, I mean, welcoming. I mean, that they've to the ideas that I expressed, and I think it's a lot, and I think it's not just my family story, but I think like a lot of families can relate to the ideas of striving for success and also failing and these expectations that we have for the future as well as ourselves. And I think a lot of people can relate to that idea, and that's a lot of the responses that I got from people. Um, to my own family, truth be told, I haven't shown this film yet. Uh, yeah,
Oh my.
so like I don't think I can muster up the courage to actually show this film. Um, they know that I've been making this film and that this film has been going to places, but I don't know. I think that's another that's homework for me to be able
That could be
to.
a whole other film.
Yeah,
Their reaction.
exactly. Yeah, so I guess I'm still figuring that out, and yeah.
I also noticed that you use some distancing in use of a family, the father, the elder brother rather than, you know, my mom and dad, my brother. But at the same time, it felt like you were bringing us in. It felt like those moments where everything is happening around you and your family's in the middle of chaos and you're a part of it, but you're also standing outside of what's happening and observing what's going on, which feels so personal
Mhm.
for those moments, which seem to happen a little too often with your family.
Mhm. Yeah. So are you asking about the use of the pronoun?
Yes.
Or yeah, I mean, initially I used second person, so you. Yeah, I wrote like the lines as if I was talking to myself. But then I figured out, like after getting some feedback, that it wasn't working quite as well. And so I was just trying to understand, like, how would I be able to tell this story um, without being so explicit in like in that it's myself and my family story. And I that's when I started thinking about distancing. And yeah, and I think there is this irony, this weird tension between distance of between like the person who's talking in the film and the audience. And I think I wanted to play with that actually. And and yeah, and also like my mother's last words in like that she doesn't want me to talk about, you know, our family as if it's like, you know, our my family, my mother or like my father. Like her saying that also like just made me think about what distance means to her and how can I tell this story. Um, how can I
It
do
also
it justice?
felt
Yeah.
like it gave her even more of a hand in the making of the film.
Yeah, in
And
a
its
sense.
placement at the very end of the film, it makes you look back at how we've experienced those words and how your family would feel about the film.
Yeah, and like making like a film like this, it's always someone told me that it's about drawing lines and where you want to draw the line in talking about your family. And I drew a line that was different from where my mother drew the line. And I guess that's something that I wanted to like, you know, kind of show in my film or play with and address. Yeah.
Stéphane. It takes about 15 years for Luann to truly settle into the idea that she is not going to go back home go back to living in Vietnam. Both her life and the country have changed. And then we later find out that she doesn't go back ever. I felt a sense of loss that she didn't necessarily seem to feel it within the film. And she talks to her granddaughter about the beauty of Vietnam. She's still clearly holding these memories very dear. And I wanted to talk to you about your decision to not have her return.
Yeah, it was. I was inspired by these women who arrived in France, and all they wanted to do is to go back, but the war was still on, and it ended in 75, and even after that, it was quite difficult to go back. And they had started another life, so with children talking French, and having their own life in a new country. And not going back was also for me a way to show these women of this generation who were dependent on their husbands, and Loan doesn't have a husband anymore, and it seems like everything is complicated for her. So this is one of the reasons she doesn't go back. But also sometimes when you've been longing for something a lot, but you kind of understand that this thing that you're longing has changed, maybe you're afraid of going back to your past and realize that your past is not there anymore. So I don't want to explain the real reasons, but yeah, I wanted to express the contradiction of someone who wants something but is afraid of that thing too when it's possible.
I wanted to ask you all about casting, especially since you mentioned before we got started, Stéphane, that your mom appears in the film. Could you each talk a bit about casting? In your case, Daniel, your use of footage of NASA space shuttles and the 1996 Olympics focusing on Korea's entrance into the games was very striking while we're being overlaid with talk from heads of state about what's happening with the economic crisis. Let's start with Daniel because the question is a little different for you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just addressing the space shuttle. I think in the initial draft of the film, in the initial cut, I didn't have the space shuttle. I was just like doing random research, or like I was doing research about like 1988, the Olympics, and also the 1997 Asian financial crisis. When like suddenly on my YouTube suggestion list there was the space shuttle footage recommendation. So I took a look at it, and it was so weird because it just worked perfectly as a metaphor for what a family was trying to achieve in their lifetime and what they wanted for their children. And I don't know, it was just so emotional just watching like everyone counting down to like a rocket trying to launch. And so after I found that footage, I was like, wow, I'm going to use this. And then I figured out how to like to put it or distribute it evenly throughout my film to create this arc in itself. Um, about the Olympic or like archival footage, yeah, I guess like the idea was to tell as much as the story as possible without me like talking and explaining everything. I wanted to like show exactly what happened and like the excitement that followed during the 80s that kind of created this bubble, this economic bubble that eventually kind of popped with the 1997 financial crisis. And yeah, and I think the pastor's kind of preaching um, that you hear throughout the film helped kind of curate exactly what was going on with this family, or like what was going wrong. Yeah, so I kind of used every layer to tell this story in a sense. Yeah.
Simeon, if you could talk about your actors and your casting.
Yeah. So I think for me, it was just I was able to make the film because I applied to a grant in Ojai Film Society, and then I was very fortunate to get it. And I was just trying to piece up everything with my resources. And so in terms of casting, it was just a lot of it was very last minute. I think because the protagonist, I wanted the different person, but then there was some conflict with his schedule, so we had to change the actor very last minute. And then I think, yeah, they were just reference from friends, or the lead actress was a friend, and then the actor who played the father was a reference from a friend. So it was just pieces up together very quickly. But I thought, yeah, there was a casting process, but I think we just had limited options, just because it's difficult to cast actors who could speak like bilingual, like both English and Mandarin. So the options were more limited. Yeah.
Well, your protagonist speaks English, Mandarin, and a little bit of French, right? So
yeah, in terms of the protagonist, the male lead, he doesn't speak French, But yeah, but the movie has like 3 languages going on. Yeah.
Stéphane, if you could talk about casting, especially since you made it so personal with your mom.
Yeah, well, I feel very lucky to have to be friends with some very talented Vietnamese French actors. So it was really an honor for me to work with them because I think they're talented, and I also think we don't see them enough because in France we don't have so many roles for people of color. So we are all fighting for a better representation of diversity everywhere, and especially here. So yeah, I was very happy to work with them and to give them this little opportunity to express their talent. Well, Lindan, who plays the lead role, is already famous here. She was in the Academy Award-winning film Indochine when she was 17, the film with Catherine Deneuve, and she's had a very nice career. And the others, maybe they didn't have as many opportunities, but they're equally talented. So I was very happy to work with them. And as for my mom, in fact, I worked with him on my previous short, and she played the lead, and she's not an actress at all. So it was really, I said, well, why not try it? And it was a very weird experience. But I was having nightmares during the shooting for the other film, but it was also a very strong experience. So when I decided to ask her to do this little part in Jasmine Lane because the main character was inspired by her, she said, "Oh yeah, okay, why not?" So now she wants to be an actress. No, I'm kidding, but so and it was a very strong experience too because we shot in the village where they actually lived, and we shot in the street where they lived, and so it brought back a lot of memories. And also almost my whole family, I have like 7 siblings, and 6 of them came during the shooting to help do stuff, and some of them had known the village, so it was very strong for them too. So it was a really strong experience with the casting, with my family, with everything. But yeah, I'm happy I was able to catch this on screen.
We do have a couple of questions from our audience. First is for Daniel. They say, I have seen your past film, How You Abandoned Your Cat in Philadelphia, which also primarily used archival footage and home video to weave together a story. I'm curious if you would call that your style, and how did you arrive at it?
I guess it's been my style for my past 2 works, but it's not like I'm intending to create this genre. But what it really is I don't have the resources to create something in live action. And in those times, I figured out, like, okay, how can I still tell a story with the footage that I have, with the images that I have, and how can I really create like an enticing story? And yeah, I begin to understand that there is media that I consume every day that really affects me. Like, for instance, the space shuttle that I was talking about earlier, and there's a reason it affects me, and I just have to pinpoint that reason and like put it into this or package it so that it works in for other people as well. And so I guess that experimental documentary style has been um, a great way for me to like tell my stories without um, in the time being, while I'm getting all the or achieving the resources to create live action films, or like really yeah, something that's based in real images. And that's something that I really aspire to do in the future. But yeah, I guess these are stepping stones. But yeah, I appreciate people understanding this as my style, if it is.
Next question. I think maybe Simeon mentioned about how we often have pressure from our families, whether that be in school or career-wise, which can be sort of a universal Asian experience. This is a question for everyone, but how has this kind of pressure from family affected your filmmaking careers, and how have you dealt with that? Whoever would like to start? Stéphane?
Okay. Well, as I said, I have 7 siblings and I'm the baby. So the pressure was more on my elder sisters and brothers, which means when I said that I wanted to study film, it was a bit easier for me. And also because at the time my parents had a little more comfortable situation, they didn't worry as much as for my elder brothers and sisters. So it didn't affect my studies and my choices. But I know it's something very Asian, and I'm nonetheless influenced by that, and I do deal with these issues in some of my projects because Asian parents' expectations are very strong, especially when they weren't born in the country they live in and they are immigrants and they want their children to have a better life than theirs. So yes, I think it's a issue that we all know about as people with Asian parents.
Daniel, we talked a bit about how your family doesn't know about your film, but how do they feel about you as a filmmaker?
I think they're pretty just weirded out, and they're scared that I might talk about them in my films. But yeah, I would say that they're welcoming and they're supportive because just because they've known that always wanted to tell stories, whether it be writing as a child or like growing up. They knew that I was into telling stories and that I would eventually find a career. I mean, my mom occasionally always, nudges me, oh, you need to be a doctor, but we all know that's not going to happen. But she tells me anyways. But yeah, I mean, they are supportive, and I'm really grateful that they're not a family that kind of is like stopping me from pursuing this career.
Simeon, if you could talk about how your family and your parents are
Yeah.
taking it that you want to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, my family is very supportive for me to do filmmaking because they're also like my father is a filmmaker, so like he's like go for it. It's like he's like don't what you can do whatever you want, but I remember he was just saying like yeah it's very like painful but you just need to know that before you go into it. But yeah. But I still relate to just like Asian parents. Like, yeah, they do have expectations, and I'm the only child, so like I think there is expectation, but not in the unhealthy way. I think there's still like like, we can have conversations, but yeah, of course there is that pressure. But I think a lot of my friends I see they have to deal with it in more unhealthy way or more extreme way, and it's very common. And I think I'm pretty fortunate to have more like reasonable parents and supportive parents. So yeah, that's my experience.
If each of you would talk a bit about what you're doing next, how you're handling lockdown, what's going on, that would be great. Simeon, you could start.
Yeah, I think this year for me, I definitely write a lot more. It's just because it's you stay indoor and it's free, and so I've been writing with my roommates a lot more, and I think we are exploring more comedy stories just for us to have more fun. So I think that's turning out well. I think we had a lot of fun and wrote a couple scripts together, and in terms of my next project, I'm planning to shoot something on my iPhone, a short film that talks about like the experience as like Chinese international students who are like kind of stuck here, and so I'm gonna make a comedy about that. So yeah, I mean, there are ways to do it. The reason I chose to shoot it on iPhone is just because it's fewer people on set. You know, I can do it with like 5 people and safer, and it doesn't cost as much. So that's what I'm planning to do.
Stéphane, if you could talk a bit about what you're working on.
Yeah, well, same here. I'm writing a lot these days, so it's convenient during lockdown. So I'm working on several feature screenplays. One of them is a musical, but a Vietnamese-French musical, and it's a comedy. So yeah, I'm still dealing with issues of double culture and finding yourself and your identity and connecting to your roots. I'm also co-writing a screenplay about returning to your country, returning to Vietnam after many, many years, for people who have avoided that for some reasons, sometimes political reasons, sometimes personal reasons. And I'm also co-writing a screenplay for another director, which is an adaptation of a novel that takes place in South Korea. So yeah, I've been working a lot on my computer, which is convenient during lockdown.
Daniel, if you could talk a bit about what you're working on and what you may be doing in the future.
Yeah, I mean, just like everyone else, I guess I've been writing, and yeah, if there's one thing that I learned after making like 2 short films about my family, is that you can't explain everything in like 10 or 15 minutes. And so, yeah, I guess that's really that really pushed me to like start writing a feature film, just following my family history and piecing together the fragments. And so, yeah, I'm piecing that feature screenplay, and I hope to finish it within the next year and maybe be able to produce it within the coming years. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for the live Q&A, both the audience and our directors, especially you, Daniel, because you're in Korea and it's what, 4 in the morning now?
Yeah.
You are a trooper. At least, Stéphane, it's a late evening, and for Simeon and I, at least it's just the middle of the afternoon. But you have all been great, and I appreciate it, and I know that all of our festival audience appreciates it too. I want to thank our community partners, and I want to thank all of our viewers. And if you haven't caught the Lost and Found Shorts block yet, you should catch it as soon as you can because it's great. The directors are great, the films are great, and everything is great.
Well, thank you.
So, thank you.